So here we go with the next part. Remember what we're trying to achieve with this. We're trying to achieve this layout here, which is going to be, the next part is going to be this set of controls here, which is a text block and a text box, and they're going to be in the next row down. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the stack panel, which is vertically aligned by default, to put those one above the other. So that's what we're going to do next. So here we go. And still in the grid, we introduce another stack panel. And what we're going to do now is we're going to say that this is in grid.row 1. And notice it started just to appear there. And we'll just to reinforce the point, although we don't have to, I'm going to put grid.column 0, sorry, column 0. And what we're going to do is we're going to span it again. Grid.column span. We're going to span over both. So that's the start of us setting that up. And then inside this, what we're going to, inside this stack panel, which is a container, we're going to put a text block. And we're going to put a text box. Okay, so that's our basic structure. Now what we'll do with these, our text block, we might as well give it its text now. Enter your username, and you can see that's starting to appear here, and we've got the text block underneath here, or sorry, text box underneath here. So we've got lots of things we've got to do in order to format these correctly. Now what I'm going to do with this is, and I know I'm going terribly slowly, I'm going to take this really gently with you in this page login, so that when we move into the page loan and the page running costs and the page summary, I can more or less just paste the code in and then explain idiosyncrasies that are relating just to this page, where they're different from what we've done before, but it'll go very much more quickly if I spend time here. So our text box and our text block are now in place, so we can start to format them. So you'll remember from before that how we style them is that within the opening tag of a control, which is our text block here, we put just before the closing chevron the properties that we want to apply. Now what I'll do just to speed things up very slightly is I'll paste these in. So I've now pasted in the various properties that I want to apply, and you can see that they're working here. Let's go through them. Vertical alignment center. In this part of the container that it lives, it's going to be aligned center. That's center vertically. Font size is 16, font weight is bold, and then I said that you can do font style. I don't like this particularly, but I think it just shows you another thing you can do. Foreground is blue, and the margin is 10. Now you notice that in the margin above where I had a previous one, and when we're doing this, it had 4 values. But when you just says 1, this says go all round with 10. Now we could have done that's left and right, and then we could have put 20 for top and bottom, but I want 10 all round. So you've got 3 ways of doing it. You can do it by just saying 1 value and that goes all around, 2 values, first one is left and right, second one is our top and bottom, and then you can do individual values if you want variations on those themes. When you put foreground, you'll notice that it underlines it with the colour, and it's got the values there for you if you wish to use them in anything. So that's very helpful. Now we have lots of controls to give names to. So I think it makes perfect sense, and I'm sure you'll understand what I'm going to do. We're going to create a style. So let's go back to our app.xaml page, and underneath this style, let's give it a bit of space. We're going to put opening chevron style, and remember we have to say target type, and this is going to be a text block, and then it's going to be given a key. I'll do it correctly this time. Control label style. So both of these work for a text block. So how can you have 2? Well, the default style is being overridden. That's what's happening here, and you're telling which way you want to override it. Because although they're very similar in some of the settings that we have, the two are in fact different, and we can choose which one we want to use. So I'm going to paste in the values, and I've got my key value pairs, the setters, the property and the value, the foreground and blue, and so forth. So that's now me got my style. I've got my style here that I can now use throughout my application. And remember, if I'd wanted just to use it in one page, I'd have declared it as a page resource, not an application resource. So let's just save all, build, make sure it's available throughout. I don't think you actually have to do that anymore. I used to have to do it in an earlier version of WPF. So what we can do now is above here, remember we're going to do all of this stuff here in the control itself. So style equals curly braces, because we want to use a static resource. And then we've got two styles we can apply, and we want to apply control label style and loop. Once again, redundancy in all of these things that we already created. And look how much shorter that is than the style it was before. Let's just do that. So you can see vast numbers of lines and much neater and tidier here. So now we want to style our text box by doing this, and we just got three things I want to do with this, which is font size, and I think I'm going to make this 14. It's quite nice and sort of visible then. Margin, I'm going to do 10 all around, and then I'm going to say padding. Now this is really interesting. Padding I'm going to set at left and right 5, top and bottom 10. Now what does that do? Margin is what is around the box, the control, whatever it might be, and padding pushes the contents in from the outside. Now that's hard for me to show because I haven't got anything actually to show you at the moment. But what we're saying is that we want to do whatever is it so that the text doesn't go up against the edge. It's going to be 5 in from the left and 10 down from the bottom, so that you don't have the text right up against the edge of the box. That's pushing the content inwards. That's what's called padding. Now, it won't be surprising to you to understand that this is something we're going to use again and again. So let's create a style, and I will just pause, create the style, replace the value, and you'll see what's happened. So I've created the style, added it underneath here. Might be good in some cases to put comments in just to see what you're doing with this, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. Those are exactly the properties that I set in the page. So now what we can do is let's just test this out to see whether you do actually have to do all the saving and stuff with it, or style. And we're going to say static resource. No, we don't have to, because there it is. So I'm going to say value text box, and everything's covered again, making our code much more terse and compact. So what we now got is we've got our text box all set up. Obviously text boxes don't have any values put in them initially, although you could put an initial value in there, but you'd have to put it inside the properties. So what we've got now is this first row. Now you'll remember that we have to do more of the same for the password. So what we can do is just do a copy, and we do, as I say, a lot of this, Control C, and we'll just do Control V. Okay, now we've actually just got one sitting on top of the other at the moment because they're both exactly the same in terms of their locations. So if I now change that to grid row 2, there's my other control set. So all I do now is enter your password. Enter your password. So let's be consistent, put small p there. I hate it when I'm not consistent. So now we've got the two controls. We do an awful lot of that. What is also quite useful to do is to use comments. So how to put a comment is there for the XAML, exclamation mark, double dash, close it, and then in here put row 1, and for this one Let's do it again for you. And we'll call that row 2. And so forth. Now that allows people to see what's going on in here, and you would perhaps in real code for for industrial production, you'd put a lot more comment in just to indicate to everybody what's going on. So that's what we've done. We've easily used copy and paste to create a duplicate of something we already know and like and know that we want to use again. So what we'll do next is we'll move on to create our buttons. So you'll remember we had 2 buttons side by side. So these are in row 0, 1, 2, 3, and this is in column 0, and this is in column 1. So that's how we have to set this up. So I've already added a comment saying that we're going to be in row 3, so I can start to do 2 stack panels. So do that. Stack panel. Stack panels, and these are going to be in. Let's put their location in first. I'll just pause and paste and type it. So I've put the code in here for where they are, and if what's useful is also that if you select that one, you see it highlighted there. Select that one, and similarly if you select that, it highlights it here. So I've set the property on the first button, vertical alignment center, that's within the stack panel. Margin is that, now I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Font size is 24, padding is 5, and width is 150. Now this is very unusual. We don't normally be explicit about the size of something because that's a whole thing about WPF. We don't want to do that, but here we have to really do that to control how well it looks, because now normally the width is dependent on the amount of text that's inside it. So let's just put our text inside here. And you'll see the clear is there. Now also what I've done is I've pushed this button here over towards the middle by giving it a left-hand margin of 50 and 10 for everything else. So I'm just going to copy these particular properties here and put them in on this button. Okay. So what I need to do is reverse the stressing on that. So I'm going to do on the left 10, on the right 50. Put the text in here, and you'll see that that lines up. Now I think we probably want to create a style of these, and that's what I'm going to do next. So I'm just going to set up the vertical alignment, the margin, I'll set up the vertical alignment, the font size and the padding and the width. So I've set up my style and I've called it form button. So here's my values all here. So I'm just going to go back to my XAML. Now what I've done is I'm going to show you something interesting. So if I put style, static resource, form button, and you'll see that it's done everything except the margin, which I'm overriding. So I can take a style and I can actually override its values. So I've got everything else and I can just apply particular things that I want to be different when I'm using the style. So let's do it again. Button. So once again what I'll do is I'll do it exactly in here. Form button. And once again it knows that it doesn't want me to do the same thing. I don't want to do the same thing with the margin, but it's a good place to start. So do that. And our whole thing is much neater. So let's deal with the final button, which goes underneath here. So that's going to be in row 4. So we're going to create a stack panel. And that's going to be in grid dot row, and it's going to be 4, and it's going to be grid dot column span. It's going to span over 2 columns, and what we can do is we can now put the button inside here. But I'm going to apply some more styling to this stack panel, and what I'm going to do is vertical alignment equals center, horizontal alignment equals center, and I'm going to say I want a margin inside the stack panel itself of 10 and then 50 top and bottom, and I think that's about as much as I want to do for that. And then I can put my button inside here, button, and in fact we're going to do a different styling from the one above, although I could apply and then show you, maybe I should do that. So style, static resource, form button, and got it in here, and put the text in here which is help. And you see my button there, but in my original design which I had, it looks slightly different, so let's just go ahead and do that. And so what I want to do is I want to override that style, and I'm going to say margin equals 30. So you can see that margin is changed in there. Padding is 20. Foreground is dark cyan, just to make it green, and I just wait, font weight is bold. So I didn't really actually use much of the original styling, but it showed you I can override many of the values when we need to use them. So let's save everything and let's build our project. Now this should show. So that's really good. We've now got a concise little looking form. It's nice and neat. It's exactly as I wanted it to look. We've got consistency across this, and we can use these styles again and again. So as I said, I'm taking a lot of time in this one, and I just want to add one more thing to this form in order to help you to understand how we're going to do things as we move forward. After that, the development process will be much quicker. Compiling, building and showing an application as you go along is really important. Firstly, it reveals any errors you've made if it doesn't compile, for example, and secondly, it gives you a chance just to have another look at all the layouts you've made, because you're making these in line with the designer, but you really want to see what they look like when they're rendered onto a screen. So that's really useful. So what we're going to have to do now is that we've got this page, which is the default page of the application, because that was set up in main window. It says open up on page login.xaml. But now what we want to do is be able to go to the next page once we've designed and built it. Now we're not putting any sort of functionality in, but we can do our navigation, and it's very similar to what you saw happen in Windows Forms. So we're going to navigate with this button. Now normally this button, which you can see here, would be something that would be doing a job. But here all we're going to do at the moment is just make it move to the next page. So what we do in order to do this is we have to give it a name. x:name, and we're going to call it by a particular style. Login button. So that's the name of our resource, of our button here. And what we can do now is we can put a click event associated with that button. So click. Now if you press tab, it creates the framework. And then if you press tab again, it takes you straight to the code for that particular click event that you've just created. So I'm going to remove the throw event to not implemented. And we're going to do a bit like we did before. So var, a variable, page loan equals new page, and it knows the pages we've got, which are just classes loan. So this dot navigation service dot navigate. Where do we want to navigate? Page loan. So that now will take us to that. Now above here, let's just put some comments up here. And let's just check that it works. So save everything, build our solution, and run. And it's taken us to the other page. So that's where we're going to stop here. Now we'll go on to page loan. Be much quicker on that one because you've seen so much of the technique that we're going to have to use. And I will now only point out sort of exceptions to the rules that we've now sort of hopefully understood. So remember three things: containers, inside containers with styles.